Today on Locked On Red Wings, Zetterberg and Osgood snubbed for the Hall of Fame again, but Mike Vernon makes it in.
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Red Wings podcast. We are your hosts, Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley. I'm a podcast producer for the daily JAWWJ News Radio podcast. Well, Scotty's the host over at Locked On Tigers, as well as a freelance journalist for the Detroit News. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Scotty, today we got a couple things to go through in this episode. One, we got to break down the Yzerman press conference, the pre-draft press conference that was held on Tuesday. We recorded with Steve Ellis on Tuesday, so we didn't get a chance to talk about it. So here we are 2 days later talking about it, as well as breaking down who did and did not make it into the NHL Hall of Fame this year around. And if people are watching on YouTube, they can clearly see who did and did not as far as Red Wing alumni go.
Bro,
Scott,
we had a cold open.
And we had a cold open. That too. That does help.
The audio people already know too.
Yeah, that too. So, Scotty, to begin with, when talking about the press conference, I guess my first question for you in regards to it, man, is like, what were your thoughts? Because I've come to just like, when watching Steve Yzerman press conferences, I just don't really get a whole lot out of them anymore.
Yeah, it's I feel the same way about when he speaks that I do when like Scott Harris of the Tigers speaks, where it's just like neither of them talk like super often. And when they do talk, they don't actually say anything, but they're so important to the organization that it's still news. Like that's pretty much where I'm at. Like, obviously it's news. This is the guy running the show. And even on top of just like a normal GM situation, I mean, he's one of the most iconic figures in the history of the city. Like that's obviously all true, but he doesn't actually ever say anything. But he also has this really impressive way of saying, how do I word it? Talking a lot without saying anything. Like, yeah, you believe you're hearing something. Like, you're like, oh, wow, that's really insightful. Thanks. Like, he really gave me a peek behind the curtain. And then you sit with the quotes after and you're like, wait a minute, this is nothing. Like, yeah, this isn't actually anything. I just got punked. So like, that's kind of what it feels like. And that's, we have known ever since Yzerman took over that he runs an incredibly tight ship where like no information ever comes out of that front office before it is intended to. So it's nothing. None of it's a surprise, but like, yeah, I mean, my thoughts were like, I'm not surprised. Like this is about what I expected June, whatever it was, 19th press conference to sound like.
Well, I mean, first of all, the press conference was completely out of nowhere. I don't remember if he had this last year ahead of the draft. I can't for the life of me remember. I could probably go back and check really easily, but I'm not going to do that. I think that there just wasn't. I agree with you. When he talks, he doesn't say a whole lot of anything. So when I say that I don't get a lot out of these press conferences, I don't mean that with like a negative connotation. I want my general manager to run a tight ship. I want my general manager to keep everything close to the chest. Like I'm not complaining about that, because if you were to go out there and be like, yeah, I'm going to trade the picks, then those picks lose their value because other teams are going to know he's looking to trade. And I mean, that leads me to my second. Yeah, exactly. And that leads me to my second question for you, Scotty. And that's like, when he says he's looking to make picks 9 and 17, do you take that serious, or do you think that's just Steve Yzerman being Steve Yzerman and just he's either lying through his teeth or just he's not going to show you what he actually thinks?
No. You see, he did the like classic. Either way, it's not technically a lie. Pay attention to the wording very closely. He said at this moment. He said like not right now. He said as it stands right now, I plan on making both picks. That implies that if someone was to swoop in and they were to build a deal that benefited the Wings that would involve getting rid of 17, that he would still take it. At no point was he like, we're not trading the picks, or like trading 17 wouldn't be worth the value. He just said, as it stands right now, I view us picking at both slots. I believe him in the sense of, I think if the draft was today, that means that they would pick at both spots, because I believe that means they're not particularly close on anything. But that doesn't mean that as we get closer to the draft, or even, I mean, if you want to get real crazy and say on draft night, if somebody was to swoop in and give him a crazy offer for, a 30, 35 NHL goal scorer that involved 17 and some more capital, that Steve would be like, no, thanks. We're really good with 17. That's what we want. I feel like that's, again, like he didn't really say anything there to me. Like that wasn't really anything. He's not lying no matter what he does, is how I took it.
Well, yeah, that's just, again, that's why when it comes to these press conferences with Steve Yzerman, it really comes down to his actions, not his words, because he's never going to give you that, Pulitzer winning soundbite that every one of these sports journalists are craving, because he's just not that. He's not a soundbite guy. And it can be incredibly frustrating as a fan to hear, like, it's like the same thing. We had the same problem with Matthew Stafford when he was the quarterback of the Detroit Lions. Right. Like, Matthew Stafford is really good at just hemming and hawing and not saying anything. Now, Yzerman doesn't hem and haw nearly as much. He says things. He just doesn't say anything with substance, and that's intentional. So from like a fan perspective, it can be frustrating because you want to hear your general manager say things about the team that you have you looking forward to. But from the aspect of like, okay, he's the general manager and he has got to do what's best for the team, it makes sense too that he would be careful not to say too much. The one thing that I thought was interesting that he did say was regarding the core, and he did say that he doesn't think that the core is there yet to compete, which isn't a hot take by any stretch of the imagination, but it is interesting to kind of get a glimpse, maybe a small glimpse behind the curtain as to what he views of the current core of, what would you say, Larkin, Raymond, and Seider is really what the core is right now?
Well, I mean, broken record, like if you're an everyday listener, I'm sorry, but like, I don't think the core is finalized until there's a legitimate 40-ish goal threat. Like I don't think that you can say that the championship core is in place without having a legitimate goal scorer anywhere in it. I think that's not only the team's biggest need, it's a necessity. It is a must. There's no arguing around it. I find it really hard to believe that anybody is going to look at this roster and be like, oh yeah, like the core, however big you think the core is, whether you think it's only 2 people or 4 people or 5 people, like I find it hard to believe that you can look at this personnel and be like, yeah, this core is in place. If they just stay the course, they're just going to keep getting better and win. Like, no, you have to add more goal scoring. You have to. So I like you said, not a hot take, not surprised by it really, but just kind of highlighting and really like shouting from the rooftops, like this core is not a core until there is a legitimate goal scoring threat.
And then somebody will ask him to, kind of to contradict the, at this point we're looking to take 9 and 17, right? Someone would ask him about a trade and he'd go, well, yeah, we'll explore a trade if it's there. It's like, That's just how he is. So, I mean, I hear people and I see people online making a big deal about the fact that he won't move 9 and 17. And it's like you said, like, look really closely at the wording. Did he actually commit to that? Or did he just say at this moment? Like, he's not going to go out there and say, yeah, I'm working on a deal right now. That's just not how it works. So that's why, again, like I go back to how we started this segment, Scotty, and that's why we're only going to do one segment on the Steve Yzerman press conference. He talked for like, an hour and a half or something crazy like that, maybe 45 minutes to an hour and a half. But it's like, there's not a lot to be gleaned off what he says because he's so good at not saying anything at all in all that time. So it's not really worth 30 minutes of our time.
Yeah, pretty much.
Cool. So we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the Hall of Fame, and because they announced their new inductees, and some former Red Wings got in and some former Red Wings did not, and we're going to talk about how we feel. So stay tuned to Locked On Red Wings. But first, I got to talk to you guys today about Gametime. Gametime is the place for last-minute ticket deals. Forget planning months in advance. Gametime has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. Get exclusive flash deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, hockey, all those things that you love. The Gametime guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. It's the fastest growing ticketing app in the country for a reason. Get images of your seat before you buy so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. Buy tickets in a matter of seconds, 2 taps, and you're all set. Tickets are sent directly to your phone, so you never have to dig through your email. Snag the tickets without the stress using Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Segment 2, Locked On Red Wings podcast. Scotty and I are going to transition now into talking about the NHL Hall of Fame. But before we get into that, shout out to the Locked On NHL. Right now, they are revealing the Locked On hosts mock draft for obviously the NHL, because it's Locked On NHL. They did picks 1 through 10 on Wednesday. You're going to do 11 through 20 on Thursday, and then finishing up with the last 12 picks, 21 through 32 on Friday, and then they'll release all of them on social media on Friday as well via a graphic. And you guys can check out who Scotty and I picked for the Detroit Red Wings at 9 and 17, assuming that those picks stay in Detroit's hands.
Yes.
So, Scotty, let's transition now for real this time into the Hockey Hall of Fame. And today, a few players got in for... I'm sorry, I'm looking for the list, and the whole page refreshed. So we'll just go off. A whole lot of goalies got in. So we'll just go off the guys we know first while I try to pull up that list. And first of all, Scotty, Mike Vernon got in from a Detroit Red Wing, won the Conn Smythe with the Red Wings in 1997 when they won that Stanley Cup, 2-time Cup winner. I think a lot of people are going to look at his statistics and immediately kind of take a step back, because he only had a career save percentage of .889, and people are going to say, wow, a goaltender with a save percentage of .889 made it into the Hockey Hall of Fame, even with the fact that he had won 2 cups, was an all-star once, and had a Conn Smythe and a Jennings. An .889 save percentage is not all that impressive, and he didn't even have that 400 win mark. But you have to also remember that scoring was screwy in the prime of his career. Save percentages were down a lot when Mike Vernon played. So .889 is actually not a bad save percentage given the era that he played in. It was actually almost dominant in some years. So, I don't have a problem with Mike Vernon getting in. I just have more of a problem with the guys who didn't get in. What are your thoughts, man?
I fully support Vernon getting in, honestly, and you already mentioned a few of the things that some people are kind of scratching their head about, just numbers wise, but you also have to remember that to your point, save percentages were way down, obviously, but for instance, his 88-89 season, he led the NHL in wins. He went 37-6. Okay, in regulation wins and losses. And he was the runner-up for the Vezina with an .897 save percentage. 2.6 goals against average was an .897 save percentage. And even in all of his, Vezina vote-getting seasons, consistently, this, he got 4th for the Vezina this year and had an .877 in the late 80s. It's just kind of an eras thing more than anything else. And, yes, he never took home a Vezina, but in the same breath, this dude was getting votes pretty consistently from age 23 until age 34. Most years, not all, but most of those years, he was getting a top 10 Vezina finish and had a handful of top 5 finishes, including, obviously, I just mentioned the runner-up year. So it's not like he was just some above average goalie for a long time and made it. Don't get it twisted. This was a premier goalie in the NHL for probably about a decade, if not longer. And then obviously you add in the hockey is a big sport with like lore, right? And you add the Smythe, right, in the postseason run with Detroit in 96, 97, and just like all of that. I mean, he really I have zero issue with it. And I know people, say what they will about the save percentage and whatnot, but I don't know. At 36 in 2000, he had a save percentage of like 917. So like, like it's just like what, like you really can just point to like eras and just like how certain players performed in, look at the other goalie stats from around the league. And if you even take the stats out of it and just do kind of where he fell in, the best goalies in the league candidate, well, he may have never been like the bona fide 1-1 goalie. The Hall of Fame is not only for like the best like players at each position ever, and B, like I said, he was pretty consistently getting votes for the Vezina for the better part of a decade.
Yeah, and again, like I don't have an issue with him getting in. It's more about the guys who didn't get in. Like
I agree with that.
Tom Barrasso, Tom Barrasso did get in, and his numbers are similar to Mike Vernon's. He did win a Vezina, but like, and when you era adjust them, their numbers statistically are very similar to Chris Osgood's. And Chris Osgood didn't get in. Curtis Joseph didn't get in. Curtis Joseph had a save percentage of 906 across his career. And like the big thing against Cujo is he never had the awards that some of these other goalies did. But you got to also remember, like, the competition for those awards was tough in the 90s and the 2000s. I mean, you're playing against an era that had Dominic Hasek and Patrick Waugh going into the early years of Lundqvist and Carey Price. Like, he played in a goalie dominant era, and he didn't get in despite having a really solid individual statistic career. It's just he doesn't have the trophy case to show for it. And it just is really weird how sometimes these teams these committees will rely so much more heavily on statistics, but then for other players, it's all about the award case. I mean, we talked last year about the fact that the Sedin twins got in, and they had some individual awards, but they never won the Stanley Cup. Daniel Alfredsson made it in. He had some individual awards, but never got the Stanley Cup. But like guys like Henrik Zetterberg, who have, not groundbreaking numbers, but also have a ton of awards and international awards to show for it, don't get in. And this is year 2 of Henrik Zetterberg not getting in. And so it's just the inconsistency that drives me nuts. I think I agree. So here's the thing. When people talk about Chris Osgood, I get, and I actually agree with that he is Hall of Very Good material. And if this was a perfect, like, Stanley or Hall of Fame caliber, like Hall of Fame, like where it's really strict on who gets in, kind of like the MLB, where it's really strict on who gets in. I have
the most strict.
Yeah. So like, I would have no problem with him not getting in. But when you compare goalies who are getting in, goalies who even era adjusted have very similar stats, but then you also have the fact that Chris Osgood had 3 Stanley Cups and 2 Jennings trophies. It's like, why? What is keeping Osgood out? Is it just the mindset that he played behind some really good Detroit Red Wings teams? But like, I feel like that diminishes the fact that he still had to put up good numbers to win those cups. Like in 07-08, he had a 914 save percentage that year. Like, you don't get a 914 save percentage because the team in front of you is great. You still have to make those saves. It's just, it blows my mind. He's had a career 905 save percentage, which is pretty dang good. And then he had all the awards to go with it, the trophy case to go with it. And he still stays out when other goalies with lesser awards and lesser statistics get in.
Yeah, I mean, really, the thing for Ozzy, I mean, we can go to break really quick because I don't want to ramble into, like the 22, 23 minute mark. But I think his is more of just like defining true peak. And I think that he was unbelievably consistent for 14 years. But I don't think he really ever had like the defined, like, oh, at his peak, this dude was, reached these heights, which I'm not saying that should automatically remove him from Hall discussion or not. I'm just saying that's what I think it is.
Yeah, that's fair. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to continue this conversation about who got in, who got out. I have the list now. So when we come back to segment 3, I'll tell you definitively who made it in. But first, I got to talk to you guys today about Birddogs. Guys, I've been talking to you guys a ton about these Birddog shorts. I love them so much.
I'm wearing mine right now.
Are you really?
I literally have mine on right now.
Why don't you show the people what you're wearing, man? Let us see a little bit of that thigh.
I'm wearing they're gray.
Are they like the gym short ones, the more polyester ones?
Yeah, the gray and like the I don't know, like seafoam green almost, turquoise maybe.
Inline?
Yeah. I really like them.
Yeah, they're comfortable, and you can
They're
wear
very
them.
comfortable. I wore them out to dinner, and comfortable, like dressed appropriately still. Wore them swimming earlier in the week too. They're like the most versatile thing I've ever owned.
You can wear them to record a podcast as well.
Right.
So go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL for a free Yeti-style tumbler with your order. That's birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL for a free Yeti-style tumbler. You won't want to take your bird dogs off. We promise you. Segment 3, Locked On Red Wings podcast. Scotty and I are talking about the Hall of Fame. Before we get back into the conversation, just definitively, now that I got it up, the Hall of Fame class was Henrik Lundqvist. Got no qualms with that. I know he doesn't have the Stanley Cup, but man, was he dominant his entire career. I think his career save percentage was like .918. It's insane. Like, how do you... A career save percentage of .918. That's nutty. Tom Barrasso, Pierre Turgeon, Mike Vernon, Carolyn Ouellette, Ken Hitchcock, the coach, as a builder, and GM Pierre Lacroix as a builder. Pronunciations are so fun.
Let's just go through Lundqvist's peak. Just not peak. Like, honestly, this is like the first, like, from 06, 07 all the way until 15, 16. Okay. This is age 24 to 34, basically. Okay. Not even stats or anything. He led the league in shutouts twice, like had a save percentage anywhere from 912 all the way to the 11-12 season when it was 930 with a sub 2 goals against average. Like, all of that's mixed in there, but even stats aside, okay, just Vezina finishes. Actually, let's just start his rookie year. Okay. As a rookie at 23 years old, 3rd, 24, 3rd, 6th, 4th, 1st, 2nd, 6th, 5th, then didn't get any Vezina votes in 15, 16, but got Hart votes. Yeah. That is the first 12, 11 years of Henrik Lundqvist's career.
I got to check out who won the Vezinas in those years, because a 920 save percentage and not even getting, like, finishing on the ballot for the Vezina with a 920 save percentage in 15, 16. That is insane to me.
Yeah.
But getting Hart votes.
So the 15, 16, I have it right in front of me here. 15, 16, Vezina went to Braden Holtby, who almost won it unanimously, was 4 votes away from a unanimous win, had a 922 save percentage, a 2-2 goals against average, went 48-9.
That'll do it.
So that will do it. But him not even getting down ballot votes is preposterous here.
Yeah, that is preposterous. Scotty, you want to talk about Henrik Zetterberg a little bit?
I would love to.
You want to lead us off here, buddy?
Yeah, it's tough. So if you go back to last year, I didn't expect Z to get in on the first ballot as somebody who has obviously followed hockey for a long time, but also is very, like, in the baseball world, some people just really hold, like, the first ballot thing really, really high and are just like, oh, first ballots are reserved for certain people. Like, I'll vote for you for the next 8 years or 9 years after your first ballot, but I won't vote for you on your first ballot, kind of thing. So I really never expected him to get in on his first year on the ballot. This year was a little bit more surprising to me. I was expecting might be too strong of a word. I did think he was going to get in. I still do believe he's going to get in. But it also, in the same breath, like, every time I hear the news, it is not like the most shocking thing in the world to me either. He's just, it's, I don't know if it's just like the Detroit versus everybody mentality that just, like, I have, like, predetermined into my brain, but, like, admittedly, if you aren't a Red Wings fan and you're just looking at stat sheets, it is closer to a fringe case than a slam dunk case. Like if you're just saying which one is it closer to from those two. But I still don't believe that there's any reason he shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. And I still think he will be at some point. I mean, did he reach 1,000 points? No. Like, does he have like 337 goals in his career? Like really solid total, like eclipsing 300 is a big deal, but like, he's not like a 400 or 500 goal scorer or anything like that. But I mean, if you just look through the trophy case that he has, there's some players I say this about, and in any sport, the Hall of Fame in every sport, its job is to preserve the history and tell the story of that sport. And I think it is impossible and a disservice to everybody who is trying to learn the history of hockey to not have Henrik Zetterberg in that story. I think that he's, again, like despite the lack of like the top end stats that some of these other people have, I think it's impossible to tell the story of the NHL without having a little bit of Bud Z in there.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you. Henrik Zetterberg's another one of those guys. Like if this was a Hall of Fame in the purest sense of the phrase, I wouldn't necessarily have a qualm with Zetterberg being left out in the Hall of Very Good type conversation. But because the NHL Hall of Fame is such a joke and like everybody gets in, you look at some of the players that get in. And again, I'll continue to bring up guys who got in above. And we were told last year that like it's, Daniel Alfredsson waited his turn. And so Henrik Zetterberg has to wait his turn. And I just feel like this was going to be the year. I was like, okay, it's year 2. It's not the year 1 elitist anymore. But he just still did not get in. And I know he didn't get the 1,000 points. He had 960 points in 1,082 games. But that's still like nearly a point per game his entire career.
Yeah.
And every single year, he played almost every single game except for the lockout year, which was shortened, and then his injury year in 2013, 2014. Outside that, he didn't play less than 60 games the rest of his career. Like he's incredibly consistent, always in there. There's only 1 year where he didn't finish in any voting for any award. Like he was always in the conversation.
Right. Yeah. And not even just like one, like, I mean, like 07, 08, he received votes for like 6 different awards. Like,
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's not like it's like, oh, like every year he's like a down ballot, like, oh, was an all-star reserve and didn't make it. Or like, oh, like every year he's like the, 50th in voting for the Bing or whatever. Like, no, like he's pretty consistently getting votes in like 3 to 5 awards for every single year from age 26 to until the injury, really.
I mean, take the year that they won the Stanley Cup, for instance. Obviously, we know that he won the Conn Smythe, but he also finished 5th in the Lady Bing voting, finished 10th in the Hart Trophy voting, and finished 3rd in the Selke. So it's like he's constantly in the conversation for all these awards. He would always just come up short. I mean, the Calder Trophy is the pinnacle of that debate. The year he was a rookie, he got robbed of the Calder Trophy. He should have won that. But Barrett Jackman won that. And what did he end up doing in his career? Jack. So it's like, and I mean, I know that Calder Trophy, you can't predict what they're going to do later, but I mean, I think most people think that Henrik Zetterberg was the better rookie that year, and he did not win. And it's just, it's frustrating. Scotty, it's also frustrating when a player who so deserves to get in does not get in. And there was another player on this ballot that never played for the Red Wings, but absolutely deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. And that's Alexander McGillney. And he won the Lady Bing Trophy the year that Zetterberg got robbed of the Calder. McGillney, I don't know what this guy has to do to get in. He won a Stanley Cup, 2-time All-Star, is a Lady Bing winner, had 1,032 points in 990 games played. I mean, he has basically a very similar resume to some of the other forwards that get in. In fact, a better resume than guys like, Alfredsson again, or Marian Hossa. Marian Hossa got in last year with 1,134 points and 1,300 games played. He was a 3-time Cup winner. He was on the All-Rookie team and on one All-Star team. McGillney has won a Lady Bing, won a Stanley Cup, and has been on 2 All-Star teams. Like the numbers and the point totals are comparable. Like I know obviously Hossa has a higher point total and McGillney has a lower, but McGillney didn't play 1,000 games and he had over 1,000 points.
Yeah, I mean I'm not sure how he's not in either. Just listen to this, okay? So, and obviously this is like peak. This is not like he wasn't doing this every single season, but I mean he still was a very solid, goal scorer there in his peak. But if you're just looking at the top, I mean, pick a number, 10. Okay, single season. Record's not the right word. How do I word this? The top 10 goal scoring seasons in NHL history. Okay. Number 1, obviously Gretzky. Number 2, Gretzky. Okay. Obviously Gretzky's in the Hall of Fame. 3, Brett Hull, Hall of Fame. 4, Mario Lemieux, Hall of Fame. Sorry, I lost my spot.
He had like 76 goals.
Esposito, 5. 76 goals, Hall of Fame. Now we have Alexander, 76 goal season he had in 92-93, not in the Hall of Fame. Also tied with him, Timu, Hall of Fame. And we have Gretzky again, Hall of Fame, Brett Hull, Hall of Fame, Red Gretzky, Hall of Fame. So in the top 10 greatest goal scoring seasons in the history of hockey, the only person who has recorded a 71 goal season or better in the history of hockey, there's only one that is not represented in the Hall of Fame, and that is him.
Yep. It's also insane to me that in that year he had 76 goals scored. He didn't even finish in the Hart Memorial.
Yeah, he didn't get a vote.
He didn't get a single vote because Mario
had 127 points.
Mario Lemieux had 160. Doug Gilmour had 127. This is why, guys, we're talking too about how, like, we talk about, this is what we mean when we talk about Mike Vernon's save percentage. You had guys like Mario Lemieux with 160 points, Doug Gilmour with 127, Pat LaFontaine 148, Adam Oates with 140. Like, scoring was insane back then. So, Chris Chelios finished 7th that year. 73 points from the back end. That'll do it. At 31 years old. It's always interesting going back in time. All right, Scott, you got any final thoughts?
We ball.
We do ball. We'll be back with a new episode tomorrow. We have a episode. We're recording with Scott Wheeler of The Athletic. He's going to help us preview 2 more prospects, so stay tuned for that. Same time, same place. It's your team every day.
Every day.